Do you think the Inspire 3 is a good investment, and is there a way for even a beginner pilot and operator to make good money on it? Let's find out.
Stop that.
It's been more than a year since I got the Inspire 3, and in this episode I try to tell you more about my feelings about this gear. Not only in terms of quality and type of shots, but also from a financial perspective, that is how and where you can make money on it. As remember, I often mention that I wouldn't recommend anything to you that I wouldn't buy myself, and the same is in this case. About 2 years ago, I watched with my kids the entire season of Our Planets, which is one of the most epic nature films. I was impressed by basically all the shots I saw, but the most powerful were the shots of the collapsing glacier and extremely intimate shots of blue whales. I was absolutely sure that all of these shots were taken by some cinema camera and a large helicopter, so imagine how surprised I was when I watched the behind the scenes from this production, where I found exactly those moments where Inspire 2 was flying through the air. At the time, I thought that maybe such an advanced drone would be a good investment for more professional projects and also for rentals, but on the other hand, the Inspire 2 was already 5 years old at the time, so I thought it was worth waiting because probably DJI will release another more advanced model. I waited a while, but it was really worth it. Now, of course, I was able to get my Inspire 3 on some good deals, but keep in mind that no one from the entire DJI team has absolutely no impact on my opinion, either in the first video and more so in the one you are watching right now. Now, the first question is, who is this drone for? Keep in mind that this is equipment which costs $20,000. And in my opinion, the Inspire 3 is an excellent tool for absolutely anyone who wants to make money with it and knows how to do it. It's been 16 months since I've had it, and during that time it has paid for itself almost 3 times over. I made this money on 2 big film projects that I can talk about yet, but also a lot on live TV, a few commercials, music videos, rentals, and a few grand from selling my stock footage. I think such a result is pretty good, especially since flying a drone was never my main business. I definitely have more projects on the ground and on live TV with my cable cam, but for me, this drone is a great kind of premium accessory for my pro clients. But okay, what about the pro line? Does it mean that if you are a beginner in this industry, you will not be able to figure it out? In my opinion, quite the opposite. And this year has made me realize even more that even if you are not an expert and just starting out in the aerial business, Inspire 3 is really a great investment. And here's why. Well, I don't know how it is in the other parts of the world, but in Central Europe, where I live, the competition in aerial filming is so high that whenever someone is looking for aerial shots on forums or industry websites, then within minutes there are hundreds of offers with very rich portfolios and very competitive price. Absolutely no surprise in this because anyone who has a small drone can easily take the simplest jobs. That's why if you are thinking about commercial flying and you have a Mavic or Avata 2 and you want to make a quick money on it, then you have a pretty long and pretty difficult way to go. The situation is slightly different with an Inspire drone. For example, if on the same forum someone is looking for aerial shots but in a RAW files and in addition with quality higher than 4K, there are definitely less of these people and companies who are able to do it. Now, it is obvious that the competition in such a professional environment is less in the case of consumer users because not everyone can afford a drone for 20 grand. But who needs such a good and expensive footage? Large live events, sport events, televisions, high-budget feature films, high-budget music videos, these are the industries you should focus on. Besides, aerial stock footage in 6 and 8K RAW quality is pretty hot stuff on which you can make good money. But here is another question. Do you need to be an absolute expert to fly such a professional drone? Does bigger and more advanced mean it is more difficult to use? Or maybe it is quite the opposite. Maybe all these additional options and improvements will make you a great pilot and operator. When I started my journey with the Inspire 16 months ago, my wife became my first pilot. At the time, Polly already had all the necessary training and license and a lot of experience in flying small drones. However, which is very important, at that time, Polly was not a full-time pilot. I would say more that she used to do it more occasionally, probably like most of us. On the other hand, she had a lot of experience when it comes to close cooperation on the line of camera operator and pilot, because in almost exactly the same way we work with my cable cam in a live TV project, where Polly is one of the main operators of the camera dolly. In fact, in the cable cam option, her job is much easier, but the basics of such cooperation are exactly the same. But about that in a moment. Now, at the very beginning, Polly had quite a lot of stress. Switching from Mavic Mini to Inspire 3 is like switching from a small Toyota to Dodge Ram, so she needed a moment to get used to it. Here, incredibly helpful were all the tools such as a POV camera, sensors of each side, and smart flight modes. All of this gives you an extremely comfortable and easy way to operate this drone. And most importantly, you have a feeling of safety and constant contact with this equipment. You actually feel like a real pilot who sits inside the aircraft. Somehow for both Polly and me, working with Inspire is much easier than the Mavic for a simple reason. The pilot is focused on flying, while the operator is focused on camera movement. Here we come to the main point, which in my opinion, next to the quality, is the greatest selling point of the Inspire 3 and something that makes the difference between consumer and professional drones. If you have never worked in this way, you must try it. You fall in love with this style of shooting. As a pilot, you don't have to think too hard about framing, and as an operator, you don't worry about flying at all. Does it change much? Almost everything. Look, in all professional setups, the rule is always the same. The operator only cares about the shot, and the camera movement is always handled by someone else. If you still don't know why, imagine three situations. The first is a pilot who can actually fly really good and at the same time take great shots. Sometimes all by himself, sometimes with the help of some intelligent function. Now, no matter how good he is, he can't take shots like a real operator for the simple reason he has to divide his attention between two jobs, for flying and framing. The second scenario is Inspire and let's say a mid-range pilot and mid-range operator. I believe that such a team will take much better shots than the solo pilot from the first option, because again, each of them has only one thing to do. And the last scenario, which is a professional drone pilot and a professional cameraman, a kind of combination straight out of Hollywood. A perfect example here is Ferdinand Wolf. Maybe one day I get close to that level with my wife Polly, but for the moment I just simply admire this kind of work. Now, obviously in a dual operator configuration, the most important element is great cooperation between operator and pilot, but once you experience such cooperation, you will understand what the nature of this kind of partnership is all about, and what's more, you will be impressed with the shots you will be able to take. Another place where the Inspire 3 dual operator options fits much better than smaller drones is of course all live and sports events where you don't have control over what's going on. All such situations require you to react immediately, so imagine how difficult it will be to fly alone and still take care of great shots. That's why I love this kind of work and this feeling that as a cameraman you don't have to completely think about where the drone is. I think if I had to describe my feeling to you in one statement, then imagine that you have 4 hands and 2 heads that can work at the same time, and what's more, still having some additional smart features that will make your shots even better. As a reminder for anyone who doesn't know, Waypoint Pro is 2 smart flight mode options. The first 3D dolly is that the Inspire 3 saves the track that you set, and then it moves only along that track, but you still keep full control over the flight speed and camera movement. In other words, it's a kind of cable cam, but you can save a much more complicated road there. And the second option, repeatable road, is in exact duplication of both the drone's flight and camera movement. There are of course tons of great uses for these features. The first ones that comes to mind are of course all the creative and very complicated shots, but the important thing for me is that there are also amazing support tools that will make any project easier even if you feel less experienced and confident as a pilot. A good example is one of our first flights when we tested our Inspire at the live events. We were flying over a large stadium in very good visibility, but the design of the stadium as well as its roof made it impossible for us to watch the drone all the time. Of course, the POV camera is made exactly for such situations, but in a way you also have to get used to it for a while, feel the distance just like with a new car. And that's why it was a great chance to test the 3D dolly. We set up a few points above the roof and then moved on the exact road, just changing the speed and camera angle depending on what was happening on the pitch. Another time we were flying on a closed airport in a very large area, basically at the limit of the drone's visibility, so to minimize the risk, we also decided to do some 3D dolly along the runway, extremely low, and so we could move quite safely and at the same time adjust our speed to match the car we were shooting. Basically all these options I mentioned are important mainly for the drone pilot, but how is it from the operator's point of view? Now, in terms of the control itself, for the past few weeks I've been using the control deck from Ignite Digi, which is in a way a game changer for operators of any equipment from DJI. Before that I was using the original DJI RC Plus and of course I was very happy with that. But since I have the control deck, I probably won't go back to operating RC Plus because now I have instant access to change the camera movement speed and all the parameters dedicated to camera movement, so it's a whole different level of camera control. Here you have a big and extremely precise joystick whose parameters you can easily and quickly modify, so you have much more precision in controlling the camera, and this is extremely helpful in dynamic situations and also when you use a wider range of lenses. At this point I must mention that Inspire 3 has its dedicated DL lenses, but you can also easily find some interesting options on the market. What's more, you can even find 3D printed adapters for a wide range of different lenses, but keep in mind that many of them are DIY plastic adapters, so they don't have any safety standards. I personally don't use these because in the situation of some sort of accident, I lose my equipment insurance, and besides I wouldn't feel safe flying over people with a lens mounted on a plastic adapter. Keep in mind that this drone in sport mode flies 100 km/h and as a result there are much bigger forces working on it. On top of that, I'm quite happy with the lens that I have and it's completely enough for me. What's more, DJI just released a new 75mm lens, and remember you have a choice of sensor size, so basically every lens you have then has 2 focal lengths. The Inspire 3 is not a drone for everyone and has basically 3 big downsides for most users. It's expensive, large and loud, making it hard to travel with, harder to stay invisible, and generally everything seems more complicated. But it's exactly the same as with any other equipment. If you need a camera for vlogging or travel videos, you choose a small one. And if you are doing a more professional project, a Hollywood movie for example, the situation is completely different. Wherever you need the highest possible resolution, best dynamic range and raw footage, you need a usually much larger camera and accessories. In any kind of high-budget productions, there is the same rule. We work with the best possible equipment that we can get. Of course, there are exceptions and there are some great films made with small cameras, but the difference is huge and a big camera can almost always do much more, and it's not just about resolution. You know, I really don't like comparisons like Pocket 4K versus Alexa Mini. It's like comparing a Ford Raptor and Toyota Prius. Both cars have 4 wheels, but the difference is that the Raptor will take you almost anywhere and can handle any situation. Same thing with cameras. The Sony FX3 is a great camera. It has 4K quality and generally everything is great, but when you want to push that image to the limit, you can't compare it with the V-Raptor or Alexa Mini. And again, it's not just about resolution, it's about dynamic range, it's about color profile, and of course it's about raw files. So is it a good investment? I believe it is. Maybe not for everyone, because in addition to being a good filmmaker, sometimes you also have to be a good businessman. But on the other hand, if your shots get better and better, and if you grow as a filmmaker, then your performance defines your value. And then you will see that your skills will get your money straight to your wallet.